Hey everybody, this is Daniel here with Propelio, and I've got Grant Kemp here from CreativeCashflow.com. And today we're going to be diving in deep on the due on sale clause and how that might be changing as we're moving into this new environment. There's no guarantees, but I think Grant and I are going to go in deep on that today and have a pretty solid discussion. Grant, on your side, I've got an odd camera angle. If there's any chance you could clean that up for me.
Okay. Oh, yes, I know exactly.
The joys of
My
live
bad, guys. I had a
broadcasting.
technical. You're just seeing my regular camera thing here. If I could ever figure out how Zoom actually wants me to interact with it. Sorry. Here we go. Video needs to be me sharing the screen and giving you my audio. This is what we call it.
So
all right, we're getting it all figured out, man. The Corona stuff has been crazy trying to get everything streamed correctly. How's that for you guys? Is that much better?
Yes, much much better. So nice to have you back, Grant.
Good. It's good to be here for you guys. I'm really glad that we're talking about this. I think that it's a topic that a lot of people ask a lot of questions about in general, but then even more so now that we have, this new world in front of us. What does that mean for us, and what does that mean for the due on sale clause is very important. So I know that after last week's episode, which was a good episode, we kind of introduced a little bit of, what are some important things that we're going to need to be focusing on in this next cycle. And then, afterwards, Daniel and I stayed online for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, something like that, just talking kind of about this, and I think that he and I share slightly different views on the topic, and I think that that's going to be super helpful for you guys, because it is unwise for you to put yourself in a group where everybody always agrees with you, right? That is unwise. You should always put yourself in groups of people that who you respect intellectually, who you respect their experience. And yeah, you're going to agree on a lot of stuff. That's part of it. But you should be able to have kind of an intellectual debate going back and forth on topics of importance, and understanding that both views are going to be valid, but both views may not be the same. So I think that this will be a good place to start off. So Daniel, when we were talking last time, can you just kind of introduce, why are we talking about due on sale clause this week? What are your feelings? Why are we giving this such a spotlight today?
I think the honest answer is I'm ignorant, and I love saying that, because that means I'm in a room with somebody that's smarter than me. And so if I've got the opportunity to sit down and pick your brain, like I've got my own personal concerns as to whether or not due on sale is going to be more prevalent in the upcoming cycle. And if that is the case, I'd like to try and have an open conversation about that, so that way anybody that's here in the audience might be able to hear what we have to say, because let's just go through and think through what are some of the possible scenarios here.
Yeah.
What happens, and this is something I've heard, and it kind of startles me, because that means I'm in a room with somebody that's. Oh, what happened over there?
I'm trying to monitor the comments, and so when it started the video stream, my audio went. My bad.
The joys of live broadcasting. We're learning this though, so. Some of the fears I have is that the due on sale clause will start escalating as this starts turning the other direction, and I've got personal reasons for why I think that is, and I can discuss that more and more as we go through this, but I am nervous, and I don't know if that's just me being Debbie Downer, or if I should really be worried about it.
Yeah, I think that you hit on something that's super important for us to just understand. And it's one of the reasons why I respect your views and outlooks on things so much, is that you prefaced this in a very humble way, right? And I think that that's one of the, like I said, one of the things I respect about you, and one of the things that we all need to model ourselves after, is approaching things that we don't like or are fearful of with a really introspective view of it, and saying, well, why am I fearful of this? Why don't I like this? And what is it internally that's keeping me from being able to get that? And the words that you used a second ago is you may be fearful because of your own ignorance. And even if that's not the case, the fact that you are approaching this problem with that outlook is really important, I think, for people to pick up on, if you didn't already pick up on that, because there's a thing called presuppositions. I don't know how nerdy people are and looking into. I'm huge into psychology. I think anybody that's in negotiations and sales should be huge into psychology and understanding kind of. But a presupposition is basically, what do you bring to the table of an argument or an understanding? What is something that you take for granted as truth without realizing, right? So the example that I use to kind of point that out would be that if you were to have an online, like one of those chat things where it just creates a random chat with different people, you have no idea who you're talking about, and it were to give you a prompt and it were to say, how hard is it to get into college? Okay. And it was a debate between the two of you. And one of the people is saying, it's impossible. There's no way you're ever going to go into college. It's just not going to happen. And the other person is like, dude, getting into college is not hard. Like, you're just being lazy if you're not trying to get into college. Well, a presupposition would be not understanding that the one saying it's near impossible is an African-American girl who grew up in a family household that made $22,000 a year total. And the one saying, dude, it's super easy, is a multi-billionaire family white male, right? Like, that would be what are you bringing to the table without even realizing it? Daniel has pointed out that he's understanding it may be ignorance, it may be a lack of knowledge, and you need to be looking at that with every problem that you're approaching. Now, to get into the direct application of what we're talking about here today with due on sale clause, I would argue that there is a lot of the fear that is held just in general based off of this kind of lack of knowledge. You may have a presupposition, a pre-understanding that you're bringing to the table saying, due on sale clause is scary, therefore I'm not going to touch it, without necessarily revealing to yourself, well, why do I think it's scary? What is the thing that is scary about that? And is there a solution to it? Does that sit with you, Daniel?
It does. But before we get too deep into that, I want to have a short, just explanation real quick. We're talking about due on sale clause. For anybody that's here that's like, what the hell are y'all talking about? Why is due on sale important? So for those that are out there in the crowd that haven't heard of this before, and y'all are new to any of the creative financing structures, there's a lot of times in your security instrument, there's going to be some sort of clause that gives the bank the right to call the full and entire note due upon the transfer of ownership. So when you do a subject to transaction, you're taking over ownership of the property without paying the full note in due. So the bank does have the right to accelerate and basically say, you owe me all of the money. So it's the right that the bank has, but they're not required to do it. And one of the concerns that the homeowner might have, the seller and the buyer, if you're doing a wrap, as well as yourself as the real estate investor, should have is, what is the due on sale clause and what do I do if it gets called? So that's what we're talking about here today. So if y'all aren't really understanding that, that's what we're talking about. And if you're doing any sort of creative financing, that's something you should understand and be able to communicate both to your buyers and your sellers, so that way you can have a better understanding of what's going on there. So on that side, Grant, I'm sorry for interrupting. I wanted to make sure I got that out there.
No, you didn't interrupt at all. That's very much part of what we need to be paying attention to, is the definition of this. Now, I'm actually going to be going through and showing you some examples of the due on sale clause, but I'm really glad that we're starting off with that definition. Now, the thing about the due on sale clause is that it's basically in every mortgage. Pretty much every mortgage is going to have a due on sale clause, which says, like Daniel pointed out, if your ownership interest or any interest therein is transferred without the bank's knowledge or acceptance, that they have the right to call the rest of the remaining part of the loan due on sale. If you sell it, it is due. There's a lot of misunderstandings out there, and one of the things that I'd like to start with this, as we lay the foundation, we'll get back into. We're gonna approach the debates of, hey, what are the merits of this happening more and more in the crash? I just want to be clear that that's the overall topic, but we got to create the foundation first. One of the major things about that is just kind of the understanding of where it comes from, and I want to step even further back because there's a lot of things that get brought up in real estate that are black and white, but people don't know they're black and white because people don't read. So what I want to do is I want to encourage you to understand where a bank gets the right to foreclose on you from, okay? So Daniel, what is it that gives the bank the right to foreclose on you or do something to you according to this asset that they've loaned you on?
The security instrument, whether it be the deed of trust in a non-judicial state or the mortgage in a judicial state, it's going to outline the terms of default and what the exact process is that the bank will need to complete to execute the foreclosure.
Absolutely, right? It is the security. Sorry, I got the Rona. It is a security instrument. And in some states, that's a deed of trust. In some states, that's a mortgage, right? You should know which state you're in is mortgage or deed of trust, but they do the same exact thing. What those documents say is, if X happens, then the bank can take the house back or do this, right? The note, there's three major documents that go along with any kind of sale of a property.
No, there's not.
I think you're about to pop up with my screen here. And those documents are very important for us to understand what they are and are not. So the three documents that there are is there's a warranty deed. What does the warranty deed do?
That's going to transfer the actual ownership. The deed's going to tell you who the owner is and who, excuse me.
Don't die. You got
I'm
the
trying not to. I think so. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of that, but man, I can tell you, man, my nerves get on fire. It's like every time I go to cough, I'm like, holy crap, it's scary right now. It really is.
It is. But it's a big deal. I'm making light of something, and you're right. We should be very clear of that. I'm making light of something because humor is a defense mechanism of mine. It is a very serious thing, and I hope that you guys are taking it seriously. And just as a 14-second soapbox, I'm about to get really. I know what's going to happen next, and I'm really not looking forward to all the posts who say, "Well, barely anybody died. We should open up the country again. This is stupid." Barely anybody is dying because people are doing the right thing by staying inside. So don't disrespect what's actually going on. Don't act like your not degree from not medical school is more important than the people who have degrees from medical schools who are telling us that we need to stay inside and stay away from each other. So please,
somebody just opened up a hot topic. There's so many people on both sides of that argue. I think we're going to derail the whole conversation. So
yeah, I don't want to do. Yeah,
back to
you're
that.
Right.
Three documents that are key during the not the transfer, but during the closing process. And one of them you got outlined here, which is the warranty deed, which shows the ownership of the property. I love your little screen like that, man. I love how you pull that off.
We can for those of you who have not seen it, I can Vanna White Weatherman this, like, oh, you've got your warranty deed, which shows your ownership of the property. Yeah, we fancy over here.
So we've got the warranty
anyway,
deed.
So warranty deed. What is the next part of, discounting the settlement statement, but it's in the transfer documents, right? There's the warranty deed, gives you the ownership. Then there's two more documents that are important for all of this. What are those two other documents?
You're going to have a real estate lien note, which was essentially your promissory note.
Yep.
And
which
then
is going to how much is due.
Mm-hmm. Who's it made payable to? When's it due? What your penalties are, what your interests are, all those fun little things that say, that you've just created a note.
And then lastly, what is our last one, which we've been talking about here?
You're going to have a security instrument, whether that be a deed of trust or a mortgage. It really depends upon what type of state you're in. For those that are out there that don't know what kind of state you're in, just go out there and Google, judicial versus non-judicial states. And I'll say that again, judicial versus non-judicial. And what that means is a judicial state means you have to go to the courts and sue the homeowner to get him out. It's a court-involved foreclosure. Non-judicial is just due process. You've got steps 1 through 10, and if you follow steps 1 through 10, you can foreclose on somebody without getting the court's involvement.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. And you can also just say, is Texas deed of trust or mortgage state, that'll pop up for you. I've had to make that Google search a lot as we've started buying houses in different states now. So securitization, what secure, blah, 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 blah. Dana Carvey used to have a skit about how like judicial system or something like that. Like you can't say it without sounding drunk. Like every single time you say judicial system and judicial system. So securitization says, hey, we get to foreclose on you if, right? So again, in light of what these documents are, and again, we have to have this foundation for you to understand everything we're about to talk about, is warranty deed does not get filed publicly, right? Warranty deed does get filed publicly. It says seller sold to buyer. Note does not get filed publicly, but that doesn't really matter. The note tells you how much, what interest rate, all that kind of stuff. The deed of trust or mortgage, that is a public filing. And inside of the deed of trust is what says everything that's got to happen for that loan. Okay. Now, what's important about this and what made me bring this up in the first place is that when I was saying there's a lot of black and white in real estate that people don't realize is black and white, is a lot of the problems that people have with, well, what are you allowed to do, are outlined in that deed of trust. So I really encourage you guys to take a minute, go look at the deed of trust on any of the properties that you've purchased and read it all the way through. I'm that guy. And I encourage you to be that guy or that girl that literally reads every word of every document you sign, because words matter and signatures matter. And the deed of trust is what outlines what can and can't happen. Quick pop quiz. And I'm going to ask this, and I'd like, we're on a delay, so I'll kind of wait, but I would like your interaction here. We've got people watching on YouTube. We got people watching on Facebook. If you sell a house with owner financing to somebody and they do not keep that house in good shape, can you foreclose on them for that? Is that a foreclosable offense? Okay, that's the pop quiz.
Can I answer?
Please do.
It depends on your security instrument.
Mm-hmm. That is a great answer. And what is our favorite answer around here?
I love it depends, man, because it makes me sound smart. I can always well, that depends, and then I can really sound like I know what I'm talking about. But honestly, I'm not 1,000% certain on that answer, but I'm pretty sure that the deed of trust and or security instrument can have a clause in there that refers back to the maintenance of the property. Now, I don't know that I've ever seen a bank drive by and be like, hey, you're not. Oh, actually, I take that back, because that's going to bring back a short story, and I'm going to make it real fast. Whenever I was like 10 or 11 years old, the house I lived in caught on fire 2 or 3 times during that period of time, and we never had the money to fix it, so the whole corner of the house was just like a burned out mess. Well, the banks actually came through and was like, you've got to fix that. If you don't, we'll have it fixed ourselves, or blank, blank, blank. I was only like 10 or 11 years old. I just remember my dad being pissed as hell because we couldn't afford to fix it, but we were being required to fix it. And then our house looked like a rainbow because we didn't have enough money to buy 20 gallons of paint. So we just bought all the, you know how you go to Home Depot and they've got all the like mismixed paints. So we just bought all the discounted mismixed paint and just painted the whole side of the house like 7 different colors.
Wow. See, and that's a great applicable thing. I'll tell you, my deed of trusts, when I sell a property, that is a clause of it. It says if you don't keep this thing up in good shape, we get to foreclose on that, or we get to take that property back. Now, let's talk about why the deed of trust exists. And I think this will be our last part before we move into the next segments of kind of debating the merits of going in. But why does the deed of trust exist? Well, I think that a lot of people forget to respect that even though we're putting our name on a piece of paper and, stuff happens, this bank legitimately pulled $120,000 bills out of an account and put it into somebody else's account, right? Let's not forget that. Even though you just showed up to a closing and you signed your name on a piece of paper and voila, you owe somebody some money and you own the house, $120,000, $200,000 left a bank account and entered somebody else's bank account. And the person who lent that money, i.e. the bank, the lender, the person holding this deed of trust, they didn't just lend it to you because you look good. They weren't like, you know what, Daniel, you're that dark, mysterious type, and I like that.
How do you know that? Because that's possible. That's very, very possible. I mean, I've got relationships.
So what they did is they said, look, we'll lend you the money, but what we're doing is we're lending you the money because this property, our worst case scenario, this property is going to be worth enough that if you don't pay me the money with my interest, I'm going to be able to take this property from you and sell it on the open market and make my money back. That is what securitization is, okay? Securitization is providing security to the lender for the money that transferred hands. So I encourage you guys, next time you're sitting on the pooper for the next week, pull up your phone, go to your Google Drive or Dropbox, pull up some deed of trusts and read through them and see what it is. You may be surprised what's in there. Again, practical story like Daniel said, I have had situations where I've sold houses with owner financing. And here's a prime example. And this is also a prime example of why I don't allow ACV policies anymore on insurance. I require RCV policies. If you have questions about that, I would recommend you talk to our redheaded
Adjusted
looks like a
cash
lumberjack.
value versus real cash value, or how's that
Yeah,
work?
replacement cash
Replacement
value
cash value. All right.
versus or replacement cost valuation versus actual cost valuation or replacement cost value. I don't remember exactly, but the key phrase is replacement versus actual. Actual amortizes out like depreciation, right? So they say this roof should
Yeah.
last 10 years. You're 5 years in. We're only going to pay
Talk
you
to
half
James
of what it's worth.
Jenkins. Talk to James Jenkins.
Yes, James Jenkins. That's what I was thinking of. So,
So let's go forward.
and
Let's see
there's
what this
videos
looks
that
like.
we have on the Propelio Academy specifically on that. I suggest you go to propelio.com/academy. But what will happen, and I had this happen with one of my borrowers here about 4 years ago, is there was a big hailstorm, and they did not have the money to pay for the deductible on their ACV policy to replace the roof, okay, or fence or whatever else was going on. I think it was all of them. And it really sucked. And I worked with them so hard, right? And I told them, and to the point that I actually had to have them come in, because we worked this for like almost 8 months, and I actually had them come into the office, sit down in front of me, and repeat the words to me. If I do not replace my roof and pay for this deductible in the next 30 days, Grant is going to take my house from me. Okay, because they were kind of
real.
I know. But there was language barrier, and they were using that somewhat as an excuse, I felt, because, you know, like, and so I had them bring their translator in. I had a translator. They spoke enough English, but we both had our translators there to cross-check each other's translations, right? And I made the homeowner, and the translator was his daughter, I made the homeowner repeat the words. If I do not fix my roof, Grant will foreclose and take this house back from me.
Let me explain. Let me explain, because that sounds kind of harsh. Let me explain why. Like, if I'm the lender and I loaned on that asset and I'm expecting that asset to be maintained and in good condition, I don't want that asset value to go down. That's where short sales happen, and that's where, you know, lenders get in trouble. Well, if that roof doesn't get fixed and now it starts leaking, well, now we've got sheetrock damage, we've got mold, we've got other damage that just continues to continue. So that roof is a very important part of that house being maintained, and it not getting fixed is not really an acceptable option. So, like, while somebody might say, Grant, you're being a little difficult there, well, it's really not only in the best interest of Grant, but it's actually in the best interest of the homeowner, whether they like it or not, because that asset is their asset. They own that house, and if they don't fix it, they're in trouble. Like, the house is going to get in some trouble. So back to you. Sorry for cutting you off, but let's get talking about the security instrument, the due on sale, the and all that crap.
Yeah. So again, exactly what you pointed out is where I was going with that, is that we have to understand that the reason that this has all been lent is because the bank needs that property to be worth enough money to get them their money back, right? Now, the thing with due on sale clause is their fear is if you sell the property, it's kind of a twofold fear. What about if you sold the property with whatever method you chose to sell it? If the due on sale clause was not there, what really keeps you from having this $200,000 house and selling it to somebody for $200,000 and just pocketing the cash and running away? Like, what really keeps you from doing that? There's lien positions, but is there anything else that really says, like, well, you have to pay off this thing. You can't just take the other $200,000, because what if this isn't going to happen? But what if our buyer was cool with it? He's like, yeah, I know that there's, a $150,000 loan to Wells Fargo on this, but what if I just give you $200,000 and we just leave this alone, right? Wells Fargo needed something in place to make sure that you weren't just going to be able to pocket that cash and run away. Yes, lien positions do protect, but that's just a complication, right? And they're opening themselves up for suit, and there's no room for gray area in law. So that's part of the reason why I think that that's there.
I got to argue with you with you just a little bit.
Okay, I mean, go for it.
Because I hate the due on sale clause. I think it's BS. I really do. I think it's absolute BS, and it shouldn't be in the mortgage. And that's my opinion on it. Because, like, there's still nothing stopping the owner from doing exactly what you just said. And there's absolutely nothing stopping the owner from doing what you just said. Because, like, even though the due on sale clause is there, they can still turn around and sell the property subject to the existing lien. And if you've got a crazy buyer that's willing to pay you the full value of the property directly to you and leave that lien in place, that's some crazy ass crap. But I mean, it could be done. But the due on sale clause still isn't going to change that.
Well, I don't know, because that is the language of the due on sale clause, right? Like, that is kind of where it's going. So for example, this is what I wanted to do. So I pulled up for your sake, oh viewers, our wonderful folks out there. I pulled up. So here's another pop quiz. Okay, before I go into this, here's another pop quiz. So we all understand, right? We are of the understanding. Actually, I haven't been super duper clear on this. When you buy a house with seller financing, subject to seller financing, and there is an unreleased lien in play, actually, I'll just leave it. When you do that, you are triggering the due on sale clause, period. Hands down. It is being triggered. Okay. I want everybody to understand that. The due on sale clause is triggered when you buy a house subject to. I will point out and hope that you guys understand that I am using the word triggered instead of the word violate because of the phrasing of most due on sale clauses saying that the lender has the right, but not the obligation, to call that loan due. Now, here's the pop quiz. We all understand when you buy a house sub 2, you're triggering the due on sale clause. What if you buy this house, okay, you live in it for a little bit, and then you decide to move on and get another house, and you decide to rent out the house that you were living in, right? That happens all the time, does it not?
All the time.
Does that trigger the due on sale clause?
No, because you didn't transfer the ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so
I guess that depends. I guess that depends on what type of loan you get, but I don't even think it matters with the FHA.
I want people to chime in.
Because FHA has.
Yes, you tell me.
I don't know if I don't know if that's. I know with FHA that you're guaranteeing on the loan that'll be your primary residence. I believe for like at least a year or something like that. So you might get in some trouble on that. But that's absolutely just gray matter in the dark side of my mind somewhere that's saying that. But I'm not positive on that. It's like it's still a rental, and I guess that would really just depend upon the agreement you made with the bank.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some questions or some people chiming in here with their answers to what is your opinion. This is a hard question. Well, does that trigger the due on sale clause?
While we wait for some of those to come back in, am I cutting you off, or like while we wait for some of those questions to come in? Like here's something I hear a lot, and I've heard your position on it, and I've heard other people's position on it. And let's talk about the Garden Saint-Germain Act. Like we hear, like a lot of people use this as their way of getting around triggering this due on sale clause. And I don't remember the exact date, but the Garden Saint-Germain Act, I believe it was like 1980-ish, 1983. I'm probably completely wrong on that.
1985 or 6, something like that, I think.
All right. Basically what happened was there was some legislation passed, I believe, that said that, yes, you are allowed to transfer the ownership of that property into a trust as long as that trust was created in the beneficiary of the owner for asset or estate planning reasons. And you are allowed to transfer ownership. So I hear a lot of sub 2 investors say, well, I just take the property down into a trust, and that means I'm solid because no one will know that I own the property, and it's protected by the Garden Saint-Germain Act. How's that work in your mind?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up. So we've gotten that question. Actually, a couple people brought it up. Ryan Garrison over on Facebook asked if the due on sale clause is increased, they still will have a hard time triggering due on sale if the property is in a trust. 1982, Garden Saint-Germain. So thank you for bringing that up. That is one of the most common defenses of the due on sale clause. So you phrased it correctly, Daniel. The Garden Saint-Germain Act is created for if you are transferring the property into a, quote, estate planning trust, that does not trigger the due on sale clause. So let me ask you, if I buy your house subject to, and I put it into a trust in order to avoid tripping the due on sale clause, is that an estate planning trust?
Well, the answer to that is no, but then I'm going to play devil's advocate as to why these people are doing that, and that is, well, you have no clue because the trust is a private document and you don't know what's going on. So, ha-ha, nanny, boo-boo.
Yep. Yeah, so there is argument for that. The reason why I bring it up and I pose the question in that order is I want to be ultimately clear, just like I'm being ultimately clear about like, hey, if you buy this house sub 2, you are triggering the due on sale clause. I also want to be clear that if you use a trust to try and avoid the due on sale clause, you are not legally unable to have the due on sale clause called. You are adding a veil of complication and protection to the issue that will probably help avoid some issues, okay? But it is not a 100% solution, which so many gurus will charge you $20,000 to tell you about this magical solution they have to the due on sale clause, which is the trust because of Garden Saint-Germain, and that's not true. Trusts are very commonly, less so, I see it happening less now, but trusts are a very common mechanism for people to con you out of your money, because trusts are complicated. Very few people understand trust law. So it's an easy way to be like, well, I understand trust law. You should pay me a bunch of money to tell you. Here's the thing. Garden Saint-Germain does say if it transfers into a trust for an estate planning purpose that it does not trigger the due on sale clause. Therefore, like Daniel said, when we look at publicly filed versus not publicly filed documents, it will publicly file a warranty deed transfer from the previous owner into a trust. Okay, that gets filed. That's a warranty deed transfer. The way that trusts work is that you have this entity. Okay, a trust is an entity, and in this entity, you have a trust. And then there's kind of who owns the trust, right? And who gets the trust's like benefit, right? So it's called a beneficial, that is a C, interest. Okay.
And then you have the trustee, correct?
And there's a trustee. Okay. So the way that trusts work is that if this trust owns a home, because I am a beautiful artist, if this trust owns a home, the trust owns the home. The beneficiary of that trust is the one who owns the trust. So basically, if your trust owns a home and you own the trust, you own the thing that owns the property, much like an LLC would be. What people will do for the Garden Saint-Germain thing is they will say, well, I'm going to subto it into this trust, and I will make the initial beneficiary of this trust seller one, right? So if the bank looks for trust documents, they will see seller one in there. But it is not a publicly filed matter to see when the beneficial interest is changed to somebody else. So then you have the sellers at the closing sign their beneficial interest over to you, the buyer, okay, which is not a public document. So in the interest of, does this solve the due on sale clause? No, it doesn't technically solve it. But yes, does it add that veil of protection? What is the likelihood of, because how would a bank have to get that document? What would the bank have to do in order to get that document from you?
Court order.
Court order.
Yep, they're going to have to sue you.
If you were going to do the trust, if you were going to do the trust, for instance, my house that I own is in a trust, okay? And it is called seller last name trust. So then we did exactly that. That adds complications to things like insurance. It gets very difficult to do a lot of things inside of the trust. So you kind of weigh off your pros and cons. So the answer to that question of the Garden Saint-Germain Act is yes, it does help. No, it is not a 100% solution. Do I think you should do it? I don't know, man. I'll put it this way. I have done a trust on maybe 2 of my properties out of all of them that we've done. In the real world, we don't see, practically, we have not historically seen over 30 plus years of my colleagues that do this on a large scale and the properties that I've had, we have not seen a big issue in due on sale clauses being called. Now, if you are overly worried and you want to do an added piece of thing to help avoid this, then the trust might be a solution. And by the way, the trust is a solution that we would use if the due on sale clause gets called. That might be a solution that we use down the line. We've gotten some answers in from the question, does rental, did that address, Daniel, does that address properly the Garden Saint-Germain stuff for you?
It does, because I just hear a lot of people talk about it, and then, with my limited knowledge, which I'll openly admit to, I'm not a big sub-2 guy. Like, I'm not the Mr. Sub-2. Like, anything I know is really because of the deals that I've done with you. I've done some sub-2 deals with you. I've done some sub-2 flips, but I've never personally in my own portfolio done a sub-2 wrap. I personally don't like the strategy from a my mindset standpoint, because I'm not really big on the long-term relationship, but I'm all for the strategy.
But you did play it smart, because you still made money on properties that fit that model best by, those of you who don't know how me and Daniel started our relationship, that's how we started our relationship, was as a JV agreement. He had all these leads he was wholesaling, and he wasn't super comfortable with the long-term marriage that goes into sub-2 flip or wraps. So he reached out to me. We created something where he got paid basically as a wholesaler, as a JV partner on these properties, and we took down a bunch of deals together. And I took on that responsibility, right? So all I'm saying is find somebody who is okay with that, because you're gonna run into, if you're fearful of that stuff, you're gonna run into this situation a lot coming up over this next few years. And you've got to have a way to capitalize and make money on everything. So if we go back to the question, does a rental trigger the due on sale clause? Norris on Facebook, it is not triggered unless until the lender decides to call it. I might argue with the phrasing of that. Sohail, who I know works in servicing for large banks, right? Due on sale triggers for occupancy fraud, but not if you've lived in the house in good faith and then moved to the next home and converted a parting residence to rental. The simple fact of renting the home that you took over sub 2, the rental will not trigger the due on sale clause, should not. Highly doubt they'll call it, from Kirsten. Alan Chester is on here. I don't think that they would need to get the trust document in order to foreclose. It's my opinion that a sale of the property does not affect the original lender, other than now having two parties responsible to make payment. I'm talking about if documents were drafted correctly. Alan is an attorney out of Austin who I agree with wholeheartedly on that statement. So yes. So now I'm going to show you something that may affect some of y'all's answers. Okay, this and again, I just want to point out and give credit to Daniel and his knowledge, because he pointed this out.
No.
Here's what we're going to look at. This is a deed of trust on a actual FHA loan of mine. What we're looking at is right here. Okay, sale without credit approval. Lender shall, if permitted by applicable law, including the Garden Saint-Germain Depository Institutions Act of 1982, and with prior approval of the Secretary, require immediate payment in full of all sums secured by the security instrument if all or part of a property or beneficial interest in a trust owning all or part of the property is sold or otherwise transferred. Okay, so what that is in legalese, if any of your interest is sold or transferred, they get to call the due on sale clause. Or number 2, the property is not occupied by the purchaser or grantee as his or her principal residence. Or the purchaser grantee does not occupy the property, but his or her credit has not been approved in accordance to the requirements of the Secretary. Show me in the deed of trust where it says you have to live in the property with good faith, right? There are interpretations of the law that get released and things like that. But if we're going to go by the book, this FHA deed of trust says that if your property is not occupied by the purchaser or grantee as your principal residence, it is a violation of the due on sale clause, and they get to call it in accordance to applicable law.
And if
right?
I'm not
applicable
wrong,
law does not say you've got to live in a property for good faith. To my knowledge, I might be off base there. Okay, but key phrase I do want to point out here is shall. Lender shall, if permitted by law. Right? That's FHA.
And that's common in FHA loans because they want it to be a primary residence. They're not looking for you to take it over and use it as an investment property. I mean, they've got Fannie Mae loan programs for that type of stuff, but FHA don't like you doing that.
Yep. So then what I did is I went over this morning and I literally went to Dallas Rome, which is the county clerk, and I just pulled the deed of trust at random, literally at random. I say it's at random. This was a property that was a lead for one of my students that we were going over the other day. And here's what we're going to look at. And this is the most common phrasing that you are going to see of the due on sale clause. What we're looking at here is number 18, transfer of the property or beneficial interest in borrower. So it says, let's skip to paragraph 2. If all or any part of the property or any interest in the property is sold or transferred, okay, pretty clear, I think. Or if the borrower is not a natural person, let's skip that parenthesis, it doesn't really matter. So if all or part of the property or any interest thereof of the property is sold or transferred without lender's prior written consent, lender may require immediate payment in full and all sums secured by this security instrument. Okay? And then again, if they can't do it if applicable law. This would be where Garden Saint-Germain would come in to protect you. So, oh shoot, am I frozen up? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, well, I'm frozen. My
It
computer's
does look
frozen.
like
Awesome.
you're yeah, your image may have been frozen. I don't know if you can refresh Zoom or something of that nature and clean you up on that side, but
Yeah, no, it's my entire computer for some reason. I added some peripherals the other day. So here's what we'll do: is let me just talk audio for a second. You can put it back on, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you. It takes me about 3.5 minutes to get everything back up on a reboot. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm gonna have to do that.
well, you can do
But
that. And while you do that, I can do some promo.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about these due on sale clauses that we just read through. All right, we'll be back I'll be back in just a few.
So, everybody, welcome to the joys of live broadcasting. As you can tell, that this is a live broadcast. Mr. Grant Kemp's computer has froze up on him. But during that meantime, let's give me a little bit of a time here. I got about 150 of y'all watching across the couple Facebook groups as well as YouTube. For those that do not know, I intend to do a live mobile home class on Facebook and on YouTube. So for those that would like to see that live mobile home class, what I'm going to be discussing in that mobile home class is how to acquire mobile homes as personal properties, essentially mobile homes that are in trailer parks. How will I buy them, turn around, clean them up, and turn around and resell those properties to an end buyer on a payment plan. So typically what I'll do with a mobile home is I'll try and buy them where I'm all in for less than 10 grand. I try to be in for less than 5 grand. With that to be said, what I'll do is I'll turn around and resell them on a note with a small down payment, somewhere between $2,000 to $5,000. Obviously, if I can get more, I'll get more. But I'll turn around and settle on like a $20,000 to $30,000 note. So I'll take $5,000 of cash and then turn it into a $30,000 piece of paper that pays me $300 or $400 a month. So those types of deals are deals that got me out of the rat race back in 2000. I was probably 2012, 13, 2012 to probably 2015 that I was hitting mobile homes pretty hard. But I'm going to be doing a class live in the Propelio group on how to do that. This isn't a paid class, so this isn't a big promo saying, hey, give me money, give me money, give me money. But I am going to ask you for something in return for it. I need the Propelio group there on Facebook to hit over 5,000 members. We're at 4,600 members right now, so I'm really only short 400 members. I'm quite certain that with everybody that's watching this right now, if you all went out to the Propelio group and went ahead and joined the Propelio group, we could probably kick off that mobile home course by early next week. So if y'all do have interest in learning how to create notes on personal property using UCC security agreements to protect your collateral, those types of things will be what I discuss. It'll probably be a full 8 to 9 hour class. I believe that Sis Shanika will be co-hosting that class with me, so I'm excited to have her on. I'm looking forward to working with her. She's been a really good friend for the past year, and I really appreciate all that she's done. So if you don't know who Sis Shanika is, go out there and follow her group. She's got a group out there called Real Estate Investing A to Z, and she does a lot of great content over there, so go check her out. So, yeah, Propelio group. Just go to Facebook, search for Propelio group, and subscribe to that group, and we'll get that kicked off as soon as we hit 5,000 members. Beyond that, for everybody out there that's watching that has never heard of Propelio software, and the only reason I'm doing this promo is because Mr. Grant lost his computer connection. We're getting him back on. But for those that have never heard of Propelio, Propelio is a software system for real estate investors that provides you up to 150,000 public record leads a month. So for anybody else that's using other systems that restrict you to 5, 10, 15, 20,000 leads a month, Propelio can give you up to 5,000 a day for a total of up to 150,000 a month. National MLS comps, plus a Driving for Dollars app that allows you to send direct mail, skip trace, and do all of those other fun things. And then last but not least, unlimited lead generating websites for anybody that needs a website for their business. Get away from that Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail email account. We can get you set up over there at Propelio with your very own website for your business, as well as a professional branded email to keep your business up and going. For anybody that does not know and would like to get half off their first month, go ahead and reach out to customer support today and say, hey, Daniel said on the Grant Teach Me Something today that I can get half off my first month, and you're good to go there. I have Grant Kemp back. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning. Sorry about that, guys. I have yet to have my computer actually full-blown crash on me, and it's done that to me twice this morning. So fun stuff. But we're back. Thanks for taking over there for a second, but hopefully that got some good time for discussion for you guys and to learn, again, like what it sounds like he was just saying. None of this happens without Propelio putting this stuff together. So thanks for having me on in here for this. So getting back into this, that is our due on sale clause, right? You notice in the majority of them, it does say that the lender may, I didn't reshare this, that the lender may require all sums due and payable, which that's a very important phrasing there, right? So my encouragement to you before we finish out in this last segment and really talking about the exercise and merits of will due on sale clause be a big problem in this next cycle, I want you guys to understand that if you ever have a question about how to feel on a due on sale clause of a deal you are working, go read the deed of trust on that property and see what it says and see if you are comfortable with that, because sometimes properties don't even have a due on sale clause on it, right? So moving into this last part, why would a bank call the due on sale clause, and what is going to be happening in this next cycle? Before we move out there, I do want to give some shout outs to a couple of people. Juan Lumberis, Chad Farrell, Elizabeth Neverready, have all shared this. Thank you guys for helping us out on that. We're getting a lot of comments coming in across Facebook and YouTube. That helps us, y'all. We want to get this information out in front of people, so please continue commenting and asking us stuff. Christian Miller from YouTube says, you guys are rock stars. Please teach me everything. That's what we're here for. Thank you guys for communicating with us. But now we're moving into this, now we're moving into this last segment about what about this next cycle? Why is it, Daniel, that you feel like there is an added fear of due on sale clauses being called, now that we've established what the due on sale clause is, how it's written out, what the securitization is, why it exists, that they can call it, how you might be able to avoid it? Why do you think that that's going to be more of a threat in this next cycle than it has up to now?
So I've had this discussion for years. I mean, this is a discussion I've had for 6, 7, 8 years. And I've had a lot of people explain it in different ways. And one of the things is people saying, well, banks don't need that money back to go out and loan more money. We're a fractional reserve lending system, and they don't really need that money to go out and loan more money. And that's been a common response that I hear back from some sub-2 investors. I heard something the other day that struck me extremely. How do I say? It kind of hit me hard, because I was like, well, damn, I that sucks. What is it? Well, note investors. Am I worried about the banks? No, probably not. The banks can call the due on sale clause. Will the banks call the due on sale clause? That's an unknown. I can't predict the future. But what happens when we have a group of note investors that are very familiar with the due on sale clause, a group of note investors that are very intelligent and have capital behind them, and they specifically search public record for properties that have had the properties transferred, ownership transferred, but have not had the liens paid off? That's a very, very easy search to do. Like any list building software out there can probably create that type of scenario for you. And now these note investors go out and specifically target the acquisition of those notes so that they can accelerate the payments. A group of note investors that are very intelligent. You got me back again. But we got these note investors that'll go out and intentionally target these types of properties with the intention of acquiring the notes so that they can accelerate the due on sale clause, so they can take the property back, and then they'll be in essentially ownership of the property with a I guess now tenant in their property that was previously on a note that they just wiped out, that was on a high interest rate at a high asset value. And then they can turn around and resell it back to that owner and then be in a first position on a high interest note. That makes me nervous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that one of the wisest things that we can do in real estate and in business in general, as you'll see me preach a lot about the merits of being a business owner, not being a real estate investor. I think that a lot of people lose that correlation when getting into real estate investing. So many people view their LLC really at their core. I mean, they might act and feel, and say that they've got it. But if you really think about like your core of how you're treating your LLC, so many folks basically treat it as, well, this is a thing that's in between me and getting sued. Where I think that when you're getting into real estate investing, you need to treat this like it's a company that you work for, that you need to look for your SWOT analysis, right? Your what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So one of the threats to this strategy of subject to and owner financing is the due on sale clause. And that threat should be accounted for regardless. Okay. I think that every threat that you have in your business should at least be on your radar. And so, similarly, right? Like if you're going to be doing rentals, well, you got to be ready for people to tear your property up, right? I mean, is that not a threat to your business? Is having a tenant that goes in there and tears your property to all hell, right?
Absolutely.
So, similarly, my view of the due on sale clause is that is a threat to your business, and that you need to have something already in line to understand what that threat is and how you might handle it if it presents itself and that kind of thing. So I made this analogy the other night because this question came up on our Monday night Q&A session. We do a Monday night Q&A for all of the creativecashflow.com members where I do a live stream every Monday and we just answer questions all night. And due on sale clause came up and I told them, hey, log in. We're going to be talking about this exact thing. And I like the analogy that I landed on that evening, which is there's a difference between pivoting due to like a new presentation of a threat and changing a fundamental, right? So here's what didn't happen at the last Super Bowl that whatever. Let's not even use the last Super Bowl. What didn't happen the last time Tom Brady went to the Super Bowl is his coach came up to him. Belichick didn't sit him down before the Super Bowl the night before and say, okay, tomorrow's the Super Bowl. We've had great success kicking everybody's butts all throughout the season. But tomorrow's the Super Bowl. So it's on a bigger stage. There's a bigger, like if you lose this game, we lose the entire season. You lose game number 8, big deal. You knew you could lose it, but big deal. This one, you lose it, you lose the entire season. You win it, all the fame and glory is yours. So let's talk about how we're going to change your throwing motion, right? Tom Brady didn't change his fundamentals because the stage was bigger, but Tom Brady may realize that the team he's playing against in the Super Bowl, oh, wow, they're really good. And they have figured out that if their edge rusher just bull rushes every time, that my left tackle can't handle that. And they're going to get to me. So I can't do a 5-step drop anymore. I got to do a 3-step drop. Okay. He didn't change his fundamentals. He didn't change which leg crossed over which. He changed and pivoted according to that specific threat that he was facing. Right. So I want to point that out because I think a lot of folks that are getting in or that are in real estate, especially when we're looking at a cycle change like this, son of a gun. Why is my computer freezing?
Oh man, that's fun. Man, let's just continue. Let's just continue without because we've got
let me continue with the audio here.
We've got maybe 10 or 15 more minutes here, and we haven't really gotten into the meat and potatoes. I mean, like we've talked about a ton of great stuff, but we haven't really gotten into the core of the conversation. So let's
that is where we're leading here. So let me do this. Let me finish out this analogy, and then we'll kind of move into the next part. So a lot of people are going into this cycle saying, well, now I should change my fundamentals, right? Now I should change which strategies I'm using and how the ingredients work, rather than just kind of saying, all right, my ingredients are going to remain the same. My fundamentals are going to remain the same. I know how to rent a property. I know how to own or finance a property. I know how to flip a property. But if I start to become presented with a new threat, right? Tom Brady didn't just have to create like, oh, holy crap. Well, now I've never thought about what if my left side gets or my blind side's getting rushed heavily. Tom Brady's able to say, okay, well, now it's time for me to take my 3-step drops because I know that that's what fixes this issue.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? You adjust to that situation. So yeah, it may be happening more. We may run into that more straight up. But I think that you should have had your 3-step drop already in your bag ready for this. And if we start seeing these due on sale clauses get called, then we just need to start activating that 3-step drop, right? We need to be aware of what our solutions to these problems are and do those solutions when presented with the scenario. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. So one of the things that I think is important for people to realize, especially newer to the subject to investing strategy, is that while this is not a common problem, upon the point in time that it does become a problem, It's a big problem. And what I mean by a big problem is it's going to require your attention. It's going to require you to take action and perform upon what you've promised both the seller and then if you did turn around and sell it on a wrap, the buyer. You have an obligation in the middle of all of that, in my opinion, to make sure that these people are taken care of. So for those that have never done this or never experienced a due on sale clause, like what are we going to do as an investor to make sure that we are being just how would I say that responsible in our business to both the seller and the buyer? Well, what are we going to do to fix this? Did I lose you completely? Oh man. Well, damn. All right, everybody. Technical difficulties. This is a new system for us, so we're going to have to figure out what's going on with Senor Grant Kemp's computer. But let's just go through and just start having some discussions on that, because I do have a lot of y'all on here, and while I am not a sub 2 specialist, I can wing it while I've got Grant getting back over here. I have done subject 2s in my life, but I have not done hundreds of them, and I've not done enough of them for me to feel like I can confidently sit here and act like I'm the specialist at it. And now I've never personally had to deal with a subject 2. Most of my subject 2 transactions are subject 2 retail deals, and with that to be said, anything I had to sub 2 wrap, I partnered with somebody else on, so I didn't have to deal with the 20, 30 years obligation. What happens if a due on sale does get called? All right, there's a couple of things that we can look at here. Let's just say the underlying lien, whoever's foreclosing, they're owed $80,000. And I have resold it at market value for $100,000 on a wrap. So that means I owe the lender $80,000. And the new buyer, I have a note with the new buyer for $100,000. Here are several options that I might be able to move forward with to go through and get myself out of this trouble. One of them can be, I could sell the note. The note has an option. Grant Kemp is back. I'll wait until he gives me the green light and says he's good to go. But one option that I might be able to have to save my own butt and save the seller and save the buyer is turn around and sell my $100,000 note. If I sell my $100,000 note and there's enough money brought in that I can clear the first position lien, I may have lost my position in the transaction by transferring my note over to someone else, but I might be able to do that in such a way that I get to save a little residual income, but that will clear the first position lien, keep the buyer in place, and keep that transaction moving forward. And that is a good one possible way of getting out from underneath that without putting you or the new buyer in any danger, or the seller. So if I've got Grant Kemp here and you heard me run my mouth about any of that, can you chime in and tell me how ignorant I was, or does that make sense?
Yeah, so I popped in at the end there where you're saying one possible solution is selling that note, right?
Yep.
And I agree. I think that is one of our 3-step drop solutions. Is that sometimes you might have to sell the note. Sometimes you might have to get some private money out and hypothecate, right? That is an option that exists. And so, understanding that there are solutions. There is refinancing. There is hypothecation. There is even to the degree of reversing the transaction entirely. Did you talk about due on sale clause being a curative issue?
No, I have not talked about it. Anything other than having an option to turn around and sell your second position lien to cure the first position, and that'll put the new buyer in a first position lien on a high interest note with a stable buyer, and you may get cut out of the transaction unless you're able to find some way of, selling, XYZ and keeping a second position lien or something of that nature, something a little more creative. But essentially you're exiting the transaction, but you have options that might be able to leave you in play with a little less cash flow.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of where it is. Like, we've got this kind of line of defense, right? First and foremost, we may want to
don't worry about your video, man. Like,
I'm just unhooking stuff. We might want to try to cure the problem, right? What I mean by it being a curative issue is that when due on sale clause gets called, it's not like when it gets called, it is a full blown, hey, yeah, we're calling this due on sale clause because you don't own the property anymore. And so what it takes to solve that, it is a curative issue. You cure that problem. You cure the problem by transferring the ownership back to the original seller, and they can no longer call that note due, right? So at the very least, which is not necessarily the most fun solution to do it, but at the very least, you do need to be working with an attorney that knows how to handle these types of things. And your kind of worst case scenario is you might need to transfer that ownership back to the seller for a period of time until you can fix the greater issue through refinancing with private money, through selling this note, through whatever other mechanism that might be. That's a very important thing to understand. That due on sale clause is not just a finality like, hey, it's done and you're done. It is a curative problem, right? Now, I have known attorneys to fix that with transferring it back, then using trusts. The problem I don't like doing trusts from the beginning is that it's confusing for most owner-occupant buyers. It's confusing for most owner-occupant buyers to understand, hey, I don't own the property, I own the thing that owns the property. And the added issues that go with insurance are a pain in the butt. I'm speaking from somebody who's done it. It's just a pain in the butt to deal with insurance stuff whenever you've got a trust and a wrap situation and all that kind of stuff. It's just difficult, right? So that has happened.
So on my side, sorry.
But the ultimate side of opinion on this, on my view, is not that due on sale clause is this threat that should necessarily say that you're not going to use the strategy unless you just have a bunch of other options that don't have that risk, right? So let me back up. Let me make this a little bit more clear. I don't think that everybody watching this video should be able to rattle off 7 ways to fix the due on sale clause, okay? I can rattle off a whole bunch of different ways that we can fix the due on sale clause if it gets called, okay? I don't think that everybody watching this video has to be able to do that. I think it's advantageous if you can. I think you should pay attention and try and pick up the language and that kind of stuff. But you don't have to know how to do that. What you have to know how to do is reach out to an attorney like Alan Seshner or Scott Horn or Matt Aycock, right? These guys that have kind of been through the ringer and know what might be something to handle that, right? You've got to be able to understand that there are resources like these Facebook groups, like the Propelio group, like creativecashflow.com, right? What's most important to intelligence is knowing where to get the answer, not necessarily what the answer is. So there is an answer to that. But even at that point, we also understand that with any strategy you are going to do ever, you have to kind of run that SWOT analysis on it, sort of, and look at, do my risks outweigh my rewards? And if not, then you are good to go. So speaking from a guy who had no money, I actually pulled the check stub. I was moving some stuff around, saw the check stub that I took I pulled my 401k out when I quit my job. That was the money I had to live on. And if I didn't make this work, it didn't work. It was $4,800. That's what I had. Okay, when I quit my job, I had $4,800 in the bank account, period. In the bank account, that's it. Because of that, and because of Subject 2, I was able to become a millionaire in 5 years. I needed the Sub 2 strategy to build the portfolio that I have, right? In maybe I shouldn't say need. That was the direction I chose to take to build my portfolio. It was worth it to me to have to deal with the error or the issues of due on sale, the issues of owner financing, because the reward of unlimited, non-institutionalized, non-recourse money, right? So if that is you, maybe that's you, but don't get into a property. On my first properties, I will also point out, I held back the down payments in case my buyer stopped being able to pay, in case we needed to put a big down payment to a private lender to refund myself out of this situation, right? Don't just go buy a great dinner and have no money to be able to solve an issue that pops up. Be prepared for that, right? Did that cover too much ground, or does that make logical sense for you, Daniel?
No, I mean that makes plenty of sense. And one of the things that I think is important for anybody that's exploring the Sub 2 strategy is to make sure that they have that checklist of responsibility that you started laying out there, which is, making sure that you're establishing some reserves, making sure that you're able to have alternate exits out of this, and knowing what those are. Like you said, that you don't need to know all 7, but in my opinion, you at least need to know 2 or 3. One, like if I'm a seller and I'm sitting down talking to you, and you're like, okay, what happens if the due on sale does get called? And you just start, my confidence is dropping. So I think it's important for you to know what some of your alternate exit strategies out of those deals are. And then I'm also of the belief that you should probably have some of those types of things at least the network in place before you do start jumping in deep on these sub twos. Like, who is my attorney? Like, not every attorney, and I'm going to lean towards almost no attorney is really going to be the attorney that you need in your corner. There's probably only going to be a small handful in your local area, and the smaller the area you're in, the less likely you're going to find a competent sub two attorney in your area will be. I say in Dallas, there's probably less than a dozen that I would say that would be on my transaction that I would trust. You need to find out who that attorney is up front. You need to have several discussions with that attorney up front. In my opinion, you need to make sure that you're retaining some level of capital so that way you are in a position that in the event that this transaction does go the wrong direction on you, you can fulfill your obligation as a business owner to both the seller and the buyer. And if you're not putting those types of things in place up front, I believe that you're really setting yourself up for a lot of heartache, not only for yourself, but for the seller and the buyer. These types of transactions, one of the primary reasons why I have personally stayed out of them, because I don't like that potential problem. For me, I like the in and out stuff. I like flips, but that's why real estate investing is so intriguing to me, because there are so many different acquisitions and disposition strategies that are available to you that you can kind of specialize within an asset class on the things that you like the most. But when a market shifts like it is shifting right now, certain strategies that you may be accustomed to will disappear on you. And if they disappear on you and you're not willing to pivot, you just need to understand that your strategy is not going to work right now. And if you don't pivot, then you're going to have to sit on the sidelines for a while. Do you got any thoughts on that, Grant?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think that it's part of the thing that I want to really make sure that people understand and drill into your minds is that I don't think that I think that it is an unwise application of the focus principles like laser focus, traction, any business books that tell you, the hedgehog principle. I think it's a misapplication of that to say, I'm only a wholesaler or I'm only a flipper. Okay. However, I do think that you need to have that thing that you're pushing towards more than anything else. I think that the solution, as we talked about last week, to an ever-changing cycle is having different ways to take properties down in different cycles. But what we've addressed today is that the due on sale clause is a very real thing. That might become more calls in this next cycle. It might. I don't know. I'm not here to tell you that I don't know that, or that it's not going to happen. I'm not here to tell you that it is, because I don't know. Nobody does, right? But to Daniel's point, I agree with you with what you said there. Like, you don't have to know 7 different ways to do it, but you should probably know a couple, right? I think the easiest one to know and execute on is the note sale strategy that you brought up, right? Okay. I think that the easiest and most applicable thing that you can know and execute on is if you have sold a wraparound mortgage. Okay, let's say you got a Bank of America loan, you wrapped it for whatever. The loan was 70 that you took over on, and you wrapped it with a 120 mortgage to your wrap buyer. You're going to sell that wrap note at a discount. Okay. You might get 75% of the unpaid balance. You might get 86% of the unpaid balance if you're getting a good note buyer. Sometimes there's more. But for instance, I buy notes. We know people that buy notes in the Propelio group. You can post up, hey, I got this note for sale. They've paid on time. I got a due on sale clause called. I need to get out of this thing quick. Somebody should be able to come in and buy that note if you have equity between the two numbers. If you don't have equity between the two numbers, then I think that you should be able to reach out to attorneys like we mentioned before, like Alan Seschker, Scott Horn. I know both have handled due on sale clause issues. Now they're here in Texas, but even if you're out of state, I bet you they can probably guide you in some directions if you run into that, right? If you have no equity in it. But we need to be aware that just like with all the other threats of doing the business, if you're getting into subject to loans and wrapping them that do have no equity, well, that is just one more issue that you need to be aware of, is that it's going to be harder to get out of a situation with a due on sale clause. But again, to my point there, I think that like we're just talking about, like, hey, have a couple of things in mind. I think the thing to have in mind there is approaching your buyer and saying, look, the due on sale clause got called. We told you about this whenever we were going to sell you the house. It happened. In order for us to fix this issue, we're going to need to temporarily transfer the ownership back into the seller's name. If you want to work with us on that, I will reserve what you owe us. And if we can fix this issue, I will sell you the house again and keep you right in the same place that you were right now. to make sure that this works for you. Your other option is this is likely going to get foreclosed on and I don't have a solution for you and you might lose your house, right?
Okay.
Which begs the question of disclosure, right? So because that's kind of where I want to, we can land the plane here or not land the plane here, depending. It's a big topic, so I'm okay with continuing on, and I've had to add some delays for technical side.
Let's say this, like we're 10 minutes past the hour. Let's go ahead and start working towards landing the plane. And if this conversation merits a continued discussion, we can follow it up on next week's Grant Teach Me Something, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. But let's go ahead and start landing the plane. And I'd like to close out with, you giving some way for these people to get in touch with you, why, you're here, and kind of let everybody know who Grant Kemp is if you don't know who this famous man is. Which is rare. Everybody. I've heard that you got mobbed at the last time you went to the airport. So let's find out a little bit more about who you are. Let's land the plane, and I've got one final question for you before we leave.
Yeah. So again, I'm Grant Kemp, creativecashflow.com. I am a big believer in seller financing. I think that it's the best way to make the most money with the least amount of responsibilities in it, or I'm sorry, least amount of not responsibilities, but threats, maybe responsibilities, right? Compared to a rental. But I want to be clear, I rent houses, I wholesale houses, I flip houses, I wholesale. If it is a single family strategy you've heard of, I do it. And I think that that's a wise part of business ownership in single family real estate. Creativecashflow.com is where I do more education every Monday night at 7. I get on a stream and I just answer questions for all of our members until the questions stop coming in, which typically is an hour to an hour and a half. But if you have questions about any of this, anything that has to do with real estate, I answer it there. We have a mastermind as well called our Creative Executives Group, because we focus a lot on building the systems and the business side of how do you have employees? How do you do the marketing? How do you make sure that lead intake is being handled correctly and outgoing is being handled correctly? All that kind of stuff. We do focus a lot on the business aspect through our creative executives. And so I do a weekly deal analysis with them where we train and we chop up your deals to make sure that you can know how deals get chopped up. And we do a quarterly mastermind. And our next mastermind is coming up in a couple of weeks. So now would be a really good time to explore joining if you do want to get into a group of people who are really used to creative financing. So check me out, creativecashflow.com. Because we understand that everything is crazy right now with COVID-19, we are running a discount during this quarantine time because I know people are kind of having to hold on to their cash. So if you put in COVID 50, COVID 50 in all caps, that'll give you 50% off of our seller financing essentials so that you can get in and get that kind of stuff going. So that's me. Yeah, I would love to have you guys here and love to help you out more on that.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions. And so you said COVID 50 gets you half off. At that half off, what's that approximately? $700, $800, $600?
$650. Right? We're normally $12.97 to get in, so it's like $648 something.
So $650 to get you in. That gets you access to sub 2 contracts. That gets you access to a weekly Q&A, and gets you access to what else?
So you get the weekly Q&A. I did just release the sub 2 contracts. That was long awaited. So you do have actual contracting abilities to download there. That just released on Friday, which is awesome. And then any video that we've ever recorded, whether that's posted on Propelio or not, is there for you. You get an access to all of the Q&A replays, and we've got exclusive video. I'm sorry?
Does that include the negotiations?
Yes, it includes we've got exclusive stuff like a negotiations masterclass. We've got more exclusive videos coming out right now. Every week we've been doing exclusive because of COVID, trying to help people because we've got it. We're buying, I've got 18 houses right now that we've bought in the last few weeks that we are disposing of. We are still buying houses and selling houses even in this. So we feel a responsibility of helping people with that knowledge. So we've been doing some exclusive stuff. Matthew Aycock came on last week and helped us out a lot with the PPP stuff. Tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be doing a stream on raising private capital in the crash, because I think that is the real big answer for how to handle a lot of the stuff that's coming up is having a good capital backing. And then next week, we'll be talking about how to test markets and marketing, so you're not just dropping 60 grand on a marketing campaign that does not work. So there will be exclusive videos. There's going to be videos that are offered elsewhere. There's going to be the weekly Q&A, the downloadable contracts, and just access to me every week for getting those answers.
All right, well, let's land this plane. So if anybody wants to take Grant up on that offer, that's a nice offer, half off, $600, $650 for all the contracts and all that content. You can check them out at creativecashflow.com. But I've got one last question for you. Let's try and keep the answer in under a minute. But you've mentioned something that I've heard you say a few times during this show, and I'd like for you to give me the quick answer, because you said there's 7 ways that you know of correcting the due on sale clause in the event that it's triggered and called. And I can only think of 3 right now in the back of my head, one of them being selling your second position note, number 2, refinancing and getting out of that, or number 3, going through and collateral assignment of the note. So those are only 3 that I'm thinking of. Can you hit me with all 7 of them? Just rattle them off as fast as you can.
Sure. Yeah. And actually 7 was just a number that I threw out, but let me go through some options. So, right. You've got transferring the property back to the owner. You've got the hypothecation / collateral assignment. You have a full-blown note sale where you sell the entire note. It will become a first lien to the note buyer, but that pays off the underlying mortgage. You have the partial note sale because you can sell pieces of your note, enough so you're able to keep some of the cash flow on the back end rather than having to get rid of the whole thing. You do have the trust side. All right. Once you transfer it back, it's kind of a caveat of that, of transferring it back, going back into a trust after that. You have pulling a JV partner into the situation with private capital to actually partner on the deal and refinance out of it and still keep your back end. Those are quick ones I can rattle off. But what kind of the point of when I was throwing that number out is that if I had to sit down, I could probably come up with 5 or 6 more. Right. Mm-hmm. The idea is just there's a lot of solutions. You don't have to know them all. You just kind of have to know where you can get some solutions.
All right. Well, I want to say big thank you to Grant for coming in here and sharing your knowledge with everybody here on the screen. Don't forget to check him out over there at creativecashflow.com. Also, once again, Propelio.com is the reason all of this is here. If you've not seen Propelio.com, or if you've not taken advantage of Propelio Academy, Propelio.com/academy, it is a 100% free resource to learn not just the basics of real estate investing, but true, full-blown, actionable real estate investment education available to you for free at Propelio.com/academy. And for those that you do need MLS comps, lead list, driving for dollars app, or a website for your business so you can get out from underneath your Gmail and Hotmail accounts, all of that is available to you at Propelio.com. And I want to say once again, thank you, Grant, for being here.
Absolutely. I would like to say one last thing that I think is very important to all of this, okay? We are aware due on sale clause exists. We are aware that we are triggering it. We have to look at if that makes sense for our business. The biggest thing I can please encourage everybody to do is fully disclose the possibility of due on sale clause to both your buyer and your seller, okay? That is the most important part of this, in my opinion, is disclosure so that everybody knows upfront what they're getting into, that the possibility exists and what the worst case scenario is. And as a case in point, we have a house in Georgia that we had a buyer on. He loved it. And I was so straightforward and ominous about what the due on sale clause was with him that he backed out. And that's cool. This happened this week because we don't want people in here who are not cool with the possibility of due on sale clause happening down the road. So on top of everything else that we've talked about, your buyer and your seller are the most important people that need to know what's happening here, because you are going to be legally shielded because of your contracts and your closings, to where if due on sale clause happens, worst case scenario, you're personally not going to be affected by that, other than maybe a lawsuit that you have to deal with because it's America and people can sue, but you would win that lawsuit because of your paperwork and stuff. These guys are going to be affected by it, and they need to be you need to disclose properly with them to make sure that they understand that goes. So I just want to be super clear on that before heading out. Thank you, Daniel, for giving me that last bit of time.
It's all good. I appreciate you being here, though. And for everybody that enjoyed, give us some likes, some comments, some shares. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell there on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe there on Propelio. And for those that do want that mobile home course taught for free live here on Facebook, do not forget to join the Propelio group. That is important. I will be doing that training hopefully next week if we hit those levels. So once again, to everybody out there, thank you. And we're out.